This happened 3 years ago, back in 2017. I was driving cross-state, and I somehow got turned around, because at some point, my GPS lost signal, and I think rerouted me. But I don't exactly know why the GPS rerouted me the way it did, because I ended up getting lost, and then that's when this happened. So, here I am driving, and I was supposed to be there before evening time. Well, somehow, and again, I don't exactly know how the GPS messed up, but it did, because the reroute that it had me take, and I didn't know it rerouted me at the time, added on an extra 4 hours, which I know doesn't make much sense. So, if you were to zoom out, you would have me see that it was basically going in circles, almost, through all these weird side roads. It's hard to explain. If I was able to accurately take a screenshot of the route that it had, it would make sense. So anyway, I'm going, and it begins to get dark. Now I'm getting concerned, because as I'm checking my GPS, I should have been there a while ago. But it's doing weird stuff, not taking me the direction it's supposed to. I almost begin to wonder if my GPS was possessed, even though that very notion is incredibly silly. But that's when things went from weird to incredibly weird. Well, here I am, driving on this less than desolate road. Nobody else around me. No cars coming, no cars behind. And all of a sudden, my car completely turns off. That includes the indoor and outdoor lighting. So, I'm coasting along the road now. I try to turn my blinker, but nothing. So I just steer my car to the side of the road and put it in park, as if that even did anything. Now I'm panicking, because here I am out in the middle of nowhere, with a completely dead car. I had assumed my alternator or battery had completely shit out on me. I went to pull up my cell phone, but it was entirely dead too. It would not turn back on. I thought it to be the strangest thing. Last I checked, not even 20 minutes ago, I had full service, and I was at least 78%. Something wasn't right. I sat there and thought, and maybe there was some sort of magnetic hiccup in this area. I don't know. I've heard of all sorts of weird things being out and happening in the desert, so I contemplated what to do, and figured now more than ever would be a great time to have a cigarette. So, I pulled out one of my Marlboros, stepped outside, pulled out my Zippo, and took a couple puffs off my cigarette, looking up into the night sky, thinking what was I going to do now? And that's when this terrible feeling came over me. Have you ever had that feeling, being in a situation, that you just felt you were going to die? A horrendous, ominous feeling. It just washed over me, and I could feel my fight or flight senses kicking in. I started thinking to myself, what the? And I began looking around frantically, wondering where the source of these ill feelings were coming from. I couldn't see anything or hear anything out of the ordinary, but the sense of the feeling was growing incredibly strong. Something I could feel was approaching my vehicle. Luckily for me, the moon wasn't entirely full, but full enough that it was pretty bright out, illuminating much of the land around me. I mean, I was in the middle of the desert, and there was nothing in each direction for miles, and I could clearly see there was nothing approaching my vehicle, like I could feel. So, about halfway through my cigarette, I threw it down, stomped it out, got back in my car, and was trying to think, what was I going to do? That's when in my rearview mirror, I could see this large black shape approaching me out of the distance. It was from my southwest, or my 4 o'clock. What was weird was, as it got closer, I could tell it was some sort of animal. And here's the bizarre thing. It appeared to be alternating between 4 legs and 2 legs, if that makes any sense at all. As I watched closer to the rearview mirror, I'm trying to determine what exactly I'm looking at. What is this? whatever it was so black and so bulky, I couldn't pick out any definitive shapes or details. And then, as it got closer to my vehicle, I can't really give a distance estimation because I don't know, but close enough I could see it more clearly. It kind of just disappeared, like it was gone. I literally thought I was hallucinating. I was convinced I was going crazy. Okay, I needed to figure out what I was going to do right this very second. But the feeling, that ominous feeling that I was going to die, just kept increasing more and more, and I could feel my anxiety going off the rails. That's when I felt a different feeling. You know how your senses will pick up on things? Well, that's the only way I can describe to you what happened next. Whatever it is that I saw, and this is what I believe due to what my senses were telling me, it not only disappeared, at least visually, but whatever it was, I felt was circling my vehicle, just out of the light, just out of view. Over and over, it was circling, and I could feel it closing in, although I kept looking around and couldn't see anything. Now I was getting extremely tense, extremely nervous, wondering what sort of predatory animal comes out at night and hunts and stalks. That's when the noises started. I would hear all sorts of strange noises, growling noises, everything that sounded like a bear, to a wolf, to a coyote, and even a fox. Weird howling, except it wasn't like a wolf howl. It sounded very distorted, kind of like if you took the howl of an animal and then put it through a megaphone, and then maybe made it more lo-fi. It's hard to explain exactly. It was just weird stuff. Very distorted. Multiple different animal noises. And yet visually, there appeared to be no definitive source. But the noise, just like my feeling and senses were telling me, was also circling around my vehicle. I would hear a strange growling noise from behind my car. Then, a few moments later, hear a weird distorted noise from the right front side of my car. They never happened at the same time, but it just kept rotating in a circle. Now, I was kind of getting worried, when instantly, out of nowhere, without even turning the key to my car and cell phone just came back on like magic. Literally out of nowhere, and since I never turned off my headlights, those came on too. The interior, the dashboard, everything was back on in full. Looking at my battery meter, the battery was charged and my alternator was clearly working. There was nothing to explain why my car just suddenly died. My cell phone, eerily enough, also decided to turn back on the exact same second my car came back on. Even though my interior lights came on too. I'm not exactly sure why, since I had never turned them on in the first place. But if we're honest, I didn't care. I was just happy my vehicle was working again, and my GPS went to rerouting, and somehow took me exactly to the road I needed to take, that I needed to get to where my destination was. As I zoomed out quickly on my GPS, I could see that somehow, which again, I don't know, it took me way off course. Probably about 3.5 hours off course in the opposite direction. When, if I would have taken the time to stare at my GPS sooner, I could have seen that the route that it had taken me wasn't making sense. But for whatever the reason being, my GPS was now suddenly deciding to reroute me appropriately. So, I took that as a good sign. My phone came back on, and I had full signal, and still at 78% battery life. I didn't see anything in front of me since my full beams were on. I quickly put my car in drive and I drove out of there, following the GPS, and as soon as I started driving, that ominous feeling around me, that something was surrounding me, just began to slowly fade away, and the further away I got from that spot, the less and less I felt that same feeling. Now, to give you an estimation, the time for my car dying from the time it turning back on was probably somewhere between 45 minutes to maybe an hour at very max. I want to say it was closer to 45-50 minutes in total, and all the while that weird stuff going on. Part of me thinks maybe it has something to do with UFOs. The other part of me knows there's a bunch of creepy black magic stuff that goes on in the desert, things of that nature. But I don't have any definitive proof, nor can I say for sure. But all I can say is that it was incredibly creepy, and really scared me. I have no explanation for what the large shape that I saw was coming towards my vehicle, but I can tell you that it resembled some sort of large animal. Maybe like a giant bear, but it was much more slender. And again, I couldn't make out any of the details of the arms, legs. The only thing I could make out was it was some very large pitch black animal. After that, how it disappeared, why it disappeared, and why it was circling my vehicle, doing all the things it was doing, made virtually no sense. But I do find it very disturbing this thing so happened to appear coming towards my vehicle very shortly after my vehicle suddenly died. I don't know if the two things have anything to do with each other, but it makes me very wary of going through the Arizona desert at night, especially after this. I have told a few of my friends about my story, and instead of mocking me and laughing me, they're just kind of wide-eyed, not really sure what to say. Thankfully, my friends and family are very supportive and believe me. They know that something weird happened. My brother chalks it up to something demonic, but I'm not exactly sure. Whatever it was, I feel had it out for me. That much I do know. Anyway, that's my story of my being lost in the Arizona desert at night. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to use it as you wish.